A Vancouver doctor is cashing in on his medical knowledge, using the real-life experiences of being an emergency room doctor as the inspiration for his novels. Now he's about to release his second book, and as Deborah Goebel reports, once again the topic is based on news stories ripped from the headlines.
Is it in the water? Is it airborne? Is it in the ventilation system?
Disease is rampaging.
Set off a worldwide pandemic, worse than SARS.
Documentaries, news stories, even the medical community.
1/3 of those who were affected die.
They can scare us silly when the topic is superbugs.
If left unchecked, it will, within hours, work its way through the hospital corridors, targeting patients already weakened by illness, probably making them sicker, potentially killing them.
Just the thought that a SARS-like virus or an avian flu or who knows what else is out there, mutating, waiting to get us, resistant to all antibiotics, well, it's almost the stuff of really good fiction.
Page infectious diseases, please pick up 01.
And for Dr. Daniel Kalla, who works here at Vancouver's St. Paul's Emergency, the temptation was just too great.
I guess subconsciously it's been happening the last 5-10 years. You know, resistance deals with this issue of superbugs and bacterial resistance, and it's tied into a conspiracy, you know, into a thriller with obviously some bad guys and some good guys. Yeah, like that's fine.
A doctor for more than a decade now, the fodder lay no further than his own workplace.
See how it's lying now? It has to be like this. I mean, some days in an emergency room, from 20 patients, I'll have 20 amazing life stories, some of which I couldn't write because no one would believe they're real. It's the cardiac cylinder.
But it wasn't until the fear of the SARS virus made its way into hospitals that Kalla got his real inspiration. And agents, along with American publishers, started paying attention.
I knew I was aiming for American publishers who are usually the ones who publish the kind of books I write, the thrillers and stuff. So, you know, I was conscious of that, and all of my books have a Canadian and American element and identity.
His first book, called Pandemic, sold more than 170,000 copies around the world. With only a screenwriting course as training, he says he writes whenever he can now.
I'm about as unstructured as they come. I start from bits of scrap paper notes and stuff, and once I get into a story, I just need to get to a computer.
Resistance is his second novel to be published.
Resistance tells the story of a new superbug emerging, but this one is resistant to all known antibiotics. And the heroes of the story is an infectious disease specialist in Vancouver and an epidemiologist in Seattle and a homicide cop in Portland, and they have to piece together that this is not a random occurrence, that somebody has deliberately instigated this emergence of the bug, and they have to try to figure out why and where it's coming from and stop it before, you know, a local catastrophe becomes a global disaster.
But should you think Kalla's plotline unlikely, just listen to excerpts from news stories done in recent years. News stories examining the profit to be made in developing antibiotics.
We talked today about a blockbuster drug being sales of $1 billion.
Our investors don't want us doing early stage research because it's high risk, it's costly.
Working from a tiny studio in his Kerrisdale home, Kalla calls writing his addiction.
Some of my friends describe it as my crack habit because I just haven't been able to stop once I started.
Taking only 6 months to write each novel, he's already working on his fourth.
For me, it's the big release. And I think our circumstances in the emergency room in the last 5-10 years, I've been doing it for over 10 years now, have got a bit more difficult, and we are facing these issues. But for me, this is my little escape and getaway, and, you know, it still feels like playing.
Were they sure there was
Still, he says he has no plans of giving up medicine, at least for now. Resistance is in bookstores everywhere. His next novel is expected in October. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Vancouver.